सीईए की प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस शुरू हो चुकी है, वहां से क्या कुछ अनाउंसमेंट्स निकल कर आ रही हैं उस पर नजर डालते हैं।
What are the key messages, as I mentioned in the initial remarks? Why is the economic growth going to perform better this decade, remainder of the decade? And what the reforms of the last 8 years have done to make sure that happens? And beyond 2030, what will be India's medium-term growth magnets? And finally, as we look ahead to 2047, what else and what more we could do to realize India's full potential in the Amrit Kal. And if you look at the, is it moving properly on the screens? Okay, thank you. The survey looks ahead to the medium term because the pandemic response and recovery phase is over. In fact, Chapter 1, the title itself says, State of the Economy, Recovery Complete. And therefore, after a long time, we have banking, non-banking and corporate sectors with healthy balance sheets, and they are ready to borrow and lend and invest. So we don't have to speak about pandemic recovery anymore. We have to look ahead to the next phase of India's economic growth process. So why is economic growth going to be better this decade? In order to look ahead to the future, we always have to first look back at the rearview mirror. Let's rewind the tape a little bit. What happened in the first decade of the millennium was a lot of optimism about BRICS economies. By 2002, balance sheets were lean and mean. Companies were willing to borrow, invest, banks were willing to lend. So leverage ratio in the corporate sector and in the overall non-financial private sector rose very sharply in the first decade. And it got to the point where the credit to GDP ratio in actual terms was much higher than the trend in the first decade of the millennium. That is what you see. The middle hump is basically actual credit GDP ratio was well above trend and it persisted for a long time.
तो आप सुन रहे थे चीफ इकोनॉमिक एडवाइज़र अनंत नागेश्वर को, और हम फिर से इनके पास आएंगे और आपको बताएंगे कि इस प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस से क्या कुछ बड़े बयान निकलकर सामने आ रहे हैं। पर